everyone, and welcome. This is Kate from Love Story, of course, and today we're going to be talking about my top favorite books that I read in 2020. Now, of course, if you've watched my videos before, you know that most of the books I read are not books that have just come out, because I am still forever catching up on books that are new releases. But these are the books, my top books that I've read, my favorite books that I read in 2020. And I apologize in advance for the length of this video, but there's 10 of them because I get decision anxiety and I hate making choices, so there's a lot of them, and I'm just going to read the descriptions either off the back of the books or on Goodreads, so you get an idea of what books they are, what the books are about, so you can decide if you want to read them in 2021. But without further ado, I also will say that these are not in any kind of order. They're not like from 10 to my least favorite to my first favorite. They're just the ones that they're in the order kind of that I remembered or thought of them. So without further ado, let's just get right in. So the first one I'm going to talk about is The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. I absolutely loved this book so much. It got me just at the right time. It snuck up on me, and it had all of the feels that I was looking for at the time that I read this. I read this before I started BookTube, so I really wanted to mention it. A bunch of these books I've started before I started my BookTube, so you haven't heard me talk about these yet. But this is The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd is one of them, and I can't wait to read her next book that just came out. I forget the title of it, but I can't wait to read that one too. I haven't gotten to it yet. So the description on the back of this book, just so you get an idea of what this book is about, is set in South Carolina in 1964. The Secret Life of Bees tells the story of Lily Owens, whose life has been shaped around the blurred memory of the afternoon her mother was killed. When Lily's fierce-hearted black stand-in mother, Rosaline, insults 3 of the deepest racists in town, Lily decides to spring them both free. They escape to Tiburon, South Carolina, a town that holds the secret to her mother's past. Taken in by an eccentric trio of black beekeeping sisters, Lily is introduced to their mesmerizing world of bees and honey and the Black Madonna. This is a remarkable novel about divine female power, a story that women will share and pass on to their daughters for years to come. This book was just so moving and so touching. It made me cry, it made me laugh, it made me love. I loved everything about this book, and I learned so much about bees in this book. Yes, there is actual bees in the book. You learn so much, and I forget, this was one of my bibliotherapy books, I want to say for a cure for the common cold, just because this book reminds me of like chicken soup. It just warms you from inside out, and it's just so good. I love it. I highly recommend this. If you haven't already read this book, I highly recommend The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. And there's also a movie adaptation that was pretty good. It was different than the book in a lot of ways, but I think it was still a fairly decent adaptation. So The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd, excellent book. One of my top favorites of 2020. The next one I listened to on audiobook, and that's Becoming by Michelle Obama. And Michelle Obama narrated this herself, and it was just so good. Oh, I love Michelle Obama so much. And this book just made me love her even more. And so this is the only one that I've got kind of half of a description that I wrote out and then half from Goodreads. So in Becoming, Michelle Obama reflects on growing up in the South Side of Chicago, to her years as a mother and a lawyer, and then as the First Lady. And we see Michelle's family when she met and fell in love with Barack, and their struggles as his political career grew and he became president. And taken off of Goodreads, With unerring honesty and lively wit, she describes her triumphs and her disappointments, both public and private, telling her full story as she lived it, in her own words and on her own terms. Warm, wise, and revelatory, Becoming is the deeply personal reckoning of a woman of soul and substance who has steadily defied expectations and whose story inspires us to do the same. I just loved this book so much. I wanted to reread it as soon as I finished it. I'm not usually a fan of celebrity memoirs or political memoirs or anything like that, but this book was just so good. It made me laugh, it made me cry, all of those good emotions, and the audiobook was phenomenal. So good. Narrated by Michelle herself. One of the best audiobooks I've read, and one of the first audiobooks I've ever listened to also. So that's Becoming by Michelle Obama. Next on the list is a book that I actually learned about through BookTube when I first discovered BookTube at the beginning of 2020, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. And this book was like one of those books that snuck up on me at the end, and a lot of these books are going to be like that. I was reading this book and I was enjoying it, but I'm like, it doesn't seem like there's a lot that really happens in this book, but I really enjoy the characters and I'm really invested in the characters. But then, and this is, depending on your definition of spoilers, this might be a spoiler for you. And I'm going to try to remember to put timestamps down on all of these books so you can just jump around to which ones you want. So just a heads up on that. I should have said that at the start, but I forgot because it's me. So The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, when I finished this book was when I realized just how much I loved this book. And so the description on the back, and this is such a lovely color. It's got this circle cut out in the front and has this. I just love it. The description in the back says, "The circus arrives without warning. No announcements precede it. It is simply there when yesterday it was not. Within the black and white striped canvas tents is an utterly unique experience, full of breathtaking amazements. It is called Le Cirque des Rêves, and it is only open at night. But behind the scenes, a fierce competition is underway, a duel between two young magicians, Celia and Marco, who have been trained since childhood expressly for this purpose by their mercurial instructors. Unbeknownst to them both, this is a game in which only one can be left standing. Amidst the high stakes, Celia and Marco soon tumble headfirst into love, and setting off a domino effect of dangerous consequences, and living the lives of everyone from the performers to the patrons hanging in the balance." And so, first I want to apologize if anyone has not read The Night Circus. That kind of gives away some spoilers from the book. I didn't realize the description would give away spoilers because it's not supposed to give away spoilers, but it gave away a little bit broad spoilers, so I apologize for that because I didn't realize that was going to happen. I should have planned better for this video, but I was just so excited to do it, I just jumped right in. So that's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and as you can see in the cover, author of The Starless Sea, which is on my shelf behind me to read this coming year. I can't wait to read it in 2021. So then the next book I read was a book that I read for my book club at work, and that's A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. And this book, oh my gosh, this book snuck up on me. I was reading it and I'm like, this is a good 3-4 star book. It's a solid book. It's cute. I like it. But then by the time I got to the end, I loved it so much. Ove grew on me so much. So the description on Goodreads says, "A grumpy yet lovable man finds his solitary world to turn on his head when a boisterous young family moves in next door. Meet Ove. He's a curmudgeon, the kind of man who points at people he dislikes as if they were burglars caught outside his bedroom window. He has staunch principles, strict routines, and a short fuse. People call him the bitter neighbor from hell. But must Ove be bitter just because he doesn't walk around with a smile plastered to his face all the time? Behind the cranky exterior, There is a story and a sadness. So when one November morning, a chatty young couple with 2 chatty young daughters move in next door and accidentally flatten Ove's mailbox, it is the lead-in to a comical and heartwarming tale of unkempt cats, unexpected friendship, and the ancient art of backing up a U-Haul, all of which will change one cranky old man and a local residents association to their very foundations. And so I just loved A Man Called Ove. It snuck up on me, and I fell in love with Ove and his whole story and his friendships and his family that he created on his own. Next on our list is A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles, and I just loved this book so much. It was so heartwarming and so great, and I can't wait for the miniseries adaptation. It's going to be fantastic. I believe Kenneth Branagh is starring and producing it, so it's going to be fantastic. But our description from Goodreads for A Gentleman in Moscow says, from the New York Times best-selling author of Rules of Civility, a transporting novel about a man who is ordered to spend the rest of his life inside a luxury hotel. With his breakout debut novel, Rules of Civility, Amor Towles established himself as a master of absorbing, sophisticated fiction, bringing late 1930s Manhattan to life with splendid atmosphere and a flawless command of style. Readers and critics were enchanted as NPR commented Towles writes with grace and verve about the mores and manners of a society on the cusp of radical change. A Gentleman in Moscow immerses us in another elegantly drawn era with the story of Count Alexander Rostov when in 1922 he is deemed unrepentant aristocrat by a Bolshevik tribunal. The Count is sentenced to house arrest in the Metropole, a grand hotel across the street from the Kremlin. Rostov, an indomitable man of erudition and wit, has never worked a day in his life and must now live in an attic room, while some of the most tumultuous decades in Russian history are unfolding outside the hotel's doors. Unexpectedly, his reduced circumstances provide him a doorway into a much larger world of emotional discovery. Brimming with humor, a glittering cast of characters, and one beautifully rendered scene after another, this singular novel casts a spell as it relates the Count's endeavor to gain a deeper understanding of what it means to be a man of purpose. And I just loved this book so much. I loved seeing Count Rostov's relationships grow and his character grow, and you really get an entire world inside this one hotel, and it was amazing to see that kind of world building within this smaller setting, and it was definitely one of my top favorites of 2020. So next up on our list is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, and this book was so good. I don't usually like books that are on celebrity book clubs as much as other people do, but this one is another one that I read from my book club at work, and it was just so moving. I read this book and I couldn't put it down. So our description from Goodreads says, for years, rumors of the Marsh Girl haunted Barclay Cove, a quiet fishing village. Kaya Clark is barefoot and wild, unfit for polite society. So in late 1969, when the popular Chase Andrews is found dead, locals immediately suspect her. But Kaya is not what they say. A born naturalist with just one day of school, she takes life's lessons from the land, learning the real ways of the world from the dishonest signals of the fireflies. But while she has the skills to live in solitude forever, the time comes when she yearns to be touched and loved. Drawn to 2 young men from town, who are each intrigued by her beautiful, wild beauty, Kaya opens herself to a new and startling world until the unthinkable happens. In Where the Crawdads Sing, Owens juxtaposes an exquisite ode to the natural world against a profound coming-of-age story and haunting mystery. Thought-provoking, wise, and deeply moving, Owens' debut novel reminds us that we are forever shaped by the child within us, while also subject to the beautiful and violent secrets that nature keeps. The story asks how isolation influences the behavior of a young woman who, like all of us, has the genetic propensity to belong to a group. The clues to the mystery are brushed into the lush habitat and natural histories of its wild creatures. And another thing I really loved about this book was that Owens was able to intertwine the natural writing seamlessly with the story, and it was just such a beautiful and heartwarming and touching story. It was so good, fantastic. List of my top 10 reads from 2020 is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, and this book I read. This was one of the last books I finished in 2020, and holy cow, this book was so good. I loved R.F. Kuang's writing style. It just kind of soothed me and made me feel like I was listening to a story or in history class or something like that. Without, you know, a lot of people think history class is boring and they fall asleep, but I love history, and I loved this book so much, and I loved her writing style. It was fantastic. So our description on the back says, when war orphan Rin aced the Keiju, the empire-wide test to find the most talented youth to learn at the academies, she surprised everyone, test officials, the guardians who wanted to marry her off and further their criminal enterprise, and even herself. But being a dark-skinned peasant girl from the south is not easy at Singard, the most elite military school in Nikon. Targeted by rival classmates for her color, poverty, and gender, Rin discovers that gods long thought dead are very much alive, and that she possesses a lethal and unearthly power and aptitude for the nearly mythical art of shamanism that could be the weapon the empire desperately needs. While Nekara is at peace, its enemy and former occupiers, the Federation of Mugen, bides its time, and a third Poppy War is just a spark away. Rin's shamanic powers may be the only way to save her people, yet she discovers more about the god that has chosen her, the vengeful phoenix. She fears that winning the war may cost her humanity, and it may already be too late. And I read this book on a lot of my favorite booktubers' recommendations. I know Leslie at The Nerdy Narrative and Jessie at The Bookish Mom both loved this book. Alan at Library of Alexandria loved this, and I'll put all of their channels in the description below because they are just fantastic booktubers, some of my favorite people, and if you haven't been following them yet, go and subscribe now. You will not regret it. I just love them. So that was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. The next book up was also a recommendation by Ellen at Library in Alexandria, and also Katrina, who has a Bookstagram account, which I'll also link here, and that is Guards by Terry Pratchett. Oh my gosh, what a hilarious book. I love this book got me to love Terry Pratchett so much. The back says it's an ideal place to start reading Pratchett, which is what Ellen at Library in Alexandria recommended doing. And Vimes ran a practiced eye over the assortment before him. It was the usual mob in times of crisis. Half of them were here to complain, a quarter of them were here to watch the other half, and the remainder were here to rob, importune, and sell hot dogs to the rest. Insurrection is in the air in the city. The haves and have-nots are about to fall out again. Captain Sam Vimes of the city's ramshackle police force is used to this. It's enough to drive a man to drink. Well, to drink more. But this time, the have-nots have found the key to a dormant, lethal weapon that even they don't fully understand. And they're about to unleash a campaign of terror on the city. Time for Captain Vimes to sober up. So that was Guards by Terry Pratchett. Such a funny book. I also read Men at Arms too, which was also great. I love Terry Pratchett, and I can't wait to continue with the City Watch books in all of the Discworld books. This is book 1 in that series, and I just loved it so much. So our next book up on this list, we only have 2 more to go, is Mistborn, or also known as The Final Empire. This is book 1 in the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. And this was also a recommendation by a lot of my favorite booktubers. I know Gregory Le Perch, Benedict the Perch, Grandpa Benedict, whatever name he goes by now. He's got so many different aliases I can't keep track. This is one of his favorite series, and I've read the first 2 books in this series. I can't wait to read Hero of Ages, book 3, and then move on to Mistborn Era 2 after that. But this is a high fantasy, adult fantasy, one of my first adult fantasy books, and I absolutely loved it. So our back description says, Sometimes I worry that I'm not the hero everyone thinks I am. The philosophers assure me that this is the time, that the signs have been met, but I still wonder if they have the wrong man. So many people depend on me. They say I will hold the future of the entire world in my arms. When they see me, do they see a liar? Once a hero rose to save the world. He failed. For 1,000 years since, the world has been a wasteland of ash and mist, ruled by the immortal emperor known as the Lord Ruler. Every revolt has failed miserably. Yet somehow hope survives. Hope that dares to dream of ending the empire and defeating the Lord Ruler. A new kind of uprising is being planned, one that depends on the cunning of a brilliant criminal mastermind and the determination of an unlikely heroine, a teenage secret urchin named Vin. Where a hero rose to save the world and failed, can a young heroine succeed? And this book had such a unique magic system to it. I love this series. Brandon Sanderson's magic system was so different, and I loved it because it wasn't just wand waving and your normal incantations. It was using metals to create the magic within themselves. Essentially, they burned the metals inside them to get different powers, and it was so fascinating, and I loved his world building. And one of the characters in this book, I won't say who because I won't give spoilers away, but one of these characters was one of my favorite characters that I've read in a very long time. And so I can't wait to continue reading this series with Hero of Ages, book 3, and see what the rest of this world is about. So then our last book on our list is a historical fiction book. And that is Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate, and this book just absolutely wrecked me in the best possible way. It made me cry and sob at the end. I was reading like the last couple chapters and I just had a box of tissues and just sobbing. So our back description says, Memphis, 1939, 12-year-old Rill Foss and her 4 younger siblings live a magical life aboard their family's Mississippi River shantyboat. But when their father must rush to their mother to the hospital one stormy night, Rill is left in charge until strangers arrive in force. Wrenched from all that is familiar and thrown into a Tennessee Children's Home Society orphanage, the Foss children are assured that they will soon be returned to their parents, but they quickly realize the dark truth. At the mercy of the facility's real-life director, the cruel Georgia Tan, Rill fights to keep her sisters and brother together. Aiken, South Carolina, present day, so it has like intertwining plot lines here. Born into wealth and privilege, Avery Stafford seems to have it all. A successful career, a handsome fiancé, and a lavish wedding on the horizon. But when she returns home to help her father weather a health crisis, a chance encounter leaves her with uncomfortable questions and compels her to take a journey through her family's long-hidden history on a path that will ultimately lead either to devastation or to redemption. And this was such an amazing book. Great writing, fantastic, very emotional, but so well written. I just couldn't put it down. I literally stayed up way past my bedtime finishing this book, like hours past my normal bedtime. It was so good, so well written, so detailed, and so emotional. I just loved it, and that was Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. I highly recommend it. So that was my top 10 favorite books I've read in 2020. As you can see, we had a good variety of different books: fiction, nonfiction, fantasy, historical fiction, classic fiction, a little bit of everything thrown in, fantasy, humor and seriousness and emotional, a little bit of everything for everyone. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought. What were your favorite reads of 2020, and what are you looking forward to reading in 2021? And that's it for now. Don't forget to keep reading. Like, comment, subscribe, tell all your friends, and we'll check in with y'all again soon. Bye.